Sonic.
Lab. TV.
So here it is, this is the M-Audio Venom, quite a new thing for M-Audio. I don't think they've ever made a hardware synthesizer before. Well, here it is. It's white, resplendent. This, in fact, is just a sticker and comes off, so everything is white. It's basically a 12-voice, 4-part multi-timbral, subtractive virtual analog synthesizer. They say that it's supposed to be edgy and dirty and kind of cutting and biting and all of those things. Well, more on that later. First of all, let's take a look at the actual physical package itself. It's got a 49-key, what I call light synth action keyboard. It's not the finest I've ever felt, to be perfectly honest. It hasn't got aftertouch. We've got pitch and modulation wheels here, octave transpose buttons, backlit, arpeggiator controls, then all the various volume controls. So we've got the master volume, synth volume, and then the various audio element interface aspects, because this has got a USB audio interface built in. Then we've got a sort of standard parameter matrix, which is 6 by 4. And the last one being a switch, which I suppose makes it 5. And we've got the various different modes, single, multi, and selecting patterns. A green backlit LCD, single value control, various multi-control aspects. That's about it for the top panel. Round the back we have dedicated main switch, 9-volt DC, MIDI in and out, expression, sustain, instrument and microphone inputs, auxiliary stereo input, and a single stereo output. While we take a listen to the demo song, let me just tell you a little bit about the voice architecture. What we have here is a virtual analog synthesizer, basically with 3 oscillators, 3 LFOs, 3 envelopes, 3 effects, basically all the 3s. There's also quite a comprehensive arpeggiator section, which allows you to have separate arpeggiator patterns on each of the 4 multi-timbral parts. You can load in your own MIDI files and run them that way if that's what you want as well as having all the standard stuff. Parameter tweaking is all done by this performance controller here, which there are 4 knobs. Would have been nice to see more, to be honest. You can't access every single parameter via the front panel. You need to get hold of the editor, which is also a free download to be able to get to every single thing in the synth. Let's take a look at that. Oh, actually one thing, you do get a CD included with all the drivers and the editor on it, but as the editor has been updated since this was made, it's always worth checking on the website for the latest updates. It's a free and painless process. The only thing I would say is the manual is also on here, so I'm a bit disappointed not to see a printed manual for this, because it's always handy to have something to thumb through, in my opinion. Anyway. So here it is, designed, built and supported by Cycraft, the VZEX Venom editor. Just close that there. What we've got is a layout here. It's a fairly basic thing. We've got access to all of these parameters. We've got the 3 oscillators here, all with their different waves. We've got the various mixes. We've got the polyphony and the voice parameters here. 3 envelopes. We've got 3 LFOs and an amplitude knob, which is kind of tremolo, auto, pan. We also have some effects here. We've got the insert effects, which gives us the possibility of having EQ, compression, auto wire, distortion reducer, some additional EQ and auxiliary effects here as well. There's also 16 modulation slots, which give us ample opportunity to route sources and destinations all over the place, although there aren't an enormous number of destinations. We'll just come back to the oscillators a minute. We should listen to the raw waves. I've got a little arpeggiator going here. Now, one thing about this is there are quite a number of waves, and it looks like, to me, they're sampled from, I can only assume, our classic synthesizers, OBJX, some nice square waves, and various other ones here. There are also a number of drum waves, which feature full drum kits, which are kind of like 808 and 909 kits, and they're actually pretty good. Let's look at a couple more oscillator features. There's a wave shaping on oscillator 1, which which is kind of like pulse width modulation. You can modulate this parameter. We've also got this oscillator sync, which if I just bring this in, be able to hear it's actually quite extreme and get some great tones with that. We've also got this drift and start mode parameters. And what they do is kind of introduce elements of random analogness to the engine. It's quite subtle, but it definitely makes a difference and gives you the impression that it's more analog than and it actually is, because obviously this is an emulation. While we're here at the oscillator, it's worth checking out the unison feature. I can dial it in here and bring up to 12 voices in and then detune them for some fairly massive sounds, but obviously when I'm using 12 voiced unison here, I've only got a 1 voice synthesizer, so it's not cloning the actual wave, it's just doing a kind of adding up the oscillators. We've also got a ring mod here, so I can bring this in. I can affect the pitch of oscillator 2. For some fairly extreme stuff as well. The good news is that the waves themselves are actually pretty beefy. There's quite a lot of bottom end and substance to them. You're probably not going to pick that up from this video, but take my word from it, there is actually quite a sort of eyebrow raising amount of bottom end, which was quite pleasantly surprising. We've got various modes with the filter. Low pass 12, band pass 12, high pass 12, and then also in 24. But one thing that really makes it quite unusual, I've got a sawtooth here, is it's got an enormous number of steps. It's like an 8-bit controller for controlling the cutoff frequency, so it's incredibly smooth. No stepping at all. Bring some resonance up there. Drop the level. As you could hear that, it was very, very smooth, no stepping. Sounded almost analog to my ears because it's such a smooth thing. They've obviously spent a lot of time on the filter, and I must say it's time well spent as far as I can tell. So let's take a look at multi-mode. I've got quite a nice patch here. And you can see by the screen that we've got the ability to split and change the MIDI channel for individual parts. We've got voice parameters, so then poly, unison, various different mix features. We can set the arpeggiator here. These arpeggiators are being used on all 3 parts. We're not using the 4th part. I can also access the individual voices just by pressing this button here. That allows me to edit the individual synth voices. Most of the multis that are set up in here demonstrate the kind of groove and arpeggiator aspect to the Venom. Very successfully, I might add. They're very nicely programmed. You can, of course, also set it up to be splits for live, and also if you're working with a DAW to go deep, 4 deep, to have 4 multi-timbral parts running from your sequencer. But to do this, you have to set it up purely in the editor. You can't access this stuff by the front panel, and that's a bit of a shame. So I've got a little sequence running here from the computer. Drums on part 1, 2-part bass line, and then this lead. Which, say I don't like, so I want to change the program. Can you hear that? There's a glitch in playback, and I can only assume that this is some kind of sort of strain on the DSP that's causing it to glitch on playback. So if you're going to want to maybe use it with, say, a sequencer live and you're sending it program changes, you're going to end up with a bit of a problem here, and I think that is a bit of an issue for some of you. For some others it may not be. So I've got my headphones on, I've got my guitar plugged in. That must mean one thing. Obviously this has also got a USB audio interface built into it, the Venom. It's fixed sample rate, 44.1, 24-bit, and it's got a separate instrument and mic gain. inputs. You can also, if I go to the global settings here, you can set the DAW to record from the synthesizer or just via the direct inputs with this button here. And if I go back to my multi, I've also got the possibility of routing the audio from the inputs, either left or right or stereo, or USB left or right, so I can affect the returns, which means I can process external audio and returns from the DAW through the synthesizer engine. It's pretty cool. So I'll just go to my DAW here, play my pattern. I've got this, and this guitar is now going through the synthesizer. If you look, it's got a little bit of compression on it from the insert effect, just there, and some delay. I'll play some delay. And I've got the mod wheel. Affecting the frequency. So there's pretty much what the Venom has to offer. The synth engine isn't massively deep. There are issues with loading programs on DSP load. There's only 4 controllers. The keyboard feels a bit plasticky. It's not a great keyboard. But you know what? It sort of doesn't matter because the thing sounds so damn good. The filter, having a high resolution filter, which is essentially an 8-bit controller, 1024 steps, is a really inspired piece of design because it makes it sound so smooth. And of course the waves themselves also sound good. Even though they're sampled, perhaps right in the very high registers, you're going to get some aliasing, but overall the beef and the weight, the waveforms, really makes a massive difference. So to my ears, this synth, you could sort of forgive it all of those foibles because it's about the sound. I think we're going to start hearing this in a lot of stuff because it can create some really in-your-face and impressive kind of wow signature sounds, which is not something that you often get in a synthesizer of this cost. Speaking of pricing, it's available at around £470 UK and $599 US. You're going to get it cheaper on your shop online. Those are full recommended retail prices. For me, even though some of it is a bit disappointing, what I'm left with is just an impression of a good sounding synthesizer, and that's really one of the main things, isn't it?